make decisions for themselves. And that oftentimes these young people are lured into trafficking with money, with other means to sort of make them, to sort of persuade them into this. This is not something that nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to be trafficked. Nobody wakes up and says, I want to be pimped out. Nobody. And I think that at the end of the day, there are different mechanisms that are used by pimps and handlers and Johns that seek to take advantage of these vulnerable young people. So one of the reasons why I supported the legislation last year was because the data speaks for itself. San Diego County is number 13 in the nation for child sex trafficking. Number 13. I mean, that in itself is destructive in nature. I mean, the fact that we as a county are number 13 in the nation, we're in that top 13 cities in regard to child sex trafficking, is so disgusting, disturbing, and embarrassing. And it's embarrassing that our officials on the Board of Supervisors, who I spoke to earlier this morning before I got here, and our city councils are not taking deeper action on combating human trafficking. I've talked about a number of reforms that I'd like to see. Last year, following the passage of SB 1414 and following the big Comic-Con bust that Marjorie and Marisa remember, the big bust of Johns at Comic-Con, I proposed to the San Diego City Council the first ever Human Trafficking Commission and Task Force, because I believe that our Board of Supervisors and our City Council in the city of San Diego, which is where the biggest problems are, and the county, because South Bay is heavily impacted by this issue, I proposed a commission, first ever commission, that would be led by experienced individuals who lived experience, who have been trafficked, that would be led by government officials, that would be led by community officials, and folks in this space like Marisa who are dealing with these issues. And the city council just sort of wiped it off like it didn't matter. I mean, it was an embarrassing bust at Comic-Con, and the city council did nothing. Shawnee La Rivera and the council members on that San Diego City Council did nothing. I proposed to them that we should do something. What they keep doing at the county board and at the city councils is brushing this off as if this is a state problem. Brushing this off as this is that there's nothing they can do about it. No, there's things they can do. They can organize task force and commissions to organize a strategy on how to combat this. They can organize. We already have the Law Enforcement Commission, which I wasn't going to repropose that. We have the FBI, the DA's office. Marisa sits on that commission, but that's one commission. That's all law enforcement. What I proposed was something under the city charter and something under the county charter that would be tasked with a different mechanism, long-term. Law enforcement combats the short-term and sort of more of the emergency crisis situations. But we need a long-term approach to combating this problem, right? And so that's why I had proposed that. So after our fight, Marjorie and I and Marisa and others on SB 1414, we just took what we could get, right? We said, all right, fine. If Democrats are going to fight us on this and they're not going to do anything for child sex trafficking in the state, believe it or not, it was not ever a felony. I mean, what are we talking about here? Then we said, all right, we'll take what we can get. And so SB 1414 was passed and gutted by Democrats in the state legislature who did not think the 16 and 17-year-olds should be included. So now we circle back to this year. Assemblymember Krell, a Democrat, and Senator Shannon Grove, the Republican who brought forth SB 1414 last year, are coming together again to try to say that we should include 16 and 17-year-olds in the criminal provisions of this legislation that was signed by Governor Gavin Newsom last year. A matter of fact, Governor Newsom noted that he felt that 16 and 17-year-olds should be included in legislation regarding child sex trafficking. I mean, nobody out there would think that a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old or even an 18-year-old, I would go far to say, but a 16 or a 17-year-old could actually consciously decide that they want to be trafficked, prostituted. Like no one would think that. And if a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old can't drink, can't smoke a cigarette, can't do a number of other things, then why? Why would we even think it would be acceptable for them to be trafficked? I mean, what are we talking about here? So this legislation, AB 379, sponsored by San Diego County District Attorney Summer Stephan and a number of sponsors. And I want to thank DA Stephan. She wanted to be here. We're going to be announcing some more forward movements as well in the coming weeks and months. We are going to work very closely together because we worked closely together last year. We worked on the repeal of SB 357, which is part of what this whole situation is about. We're trying to roll back the clock we're trying to roll forward the clock on those who rolled the clock back on reforms, right? SB 357 was a disaster several years ago, brought forth by Senator Scott Wiener of San Francisco, and it was a disastrous bill that made it easier for Johns and pimps to run the streets with these prostitutes, specifically young people under the age of 18. So we're doing our work to try to deal with sort of the fight. This shouldn't be a fight, but we're doing our work to try to deal with the fight on this. And so this morning, many of you have a copy of this. My office issued a proposal to the County Board of Supervisors. Now, I want to be clear. DA Stephan is a sponsor of this legislation, but I am the sponsor of the county resolution. And the reason why I'm proposing this county resolution be made and done and approved by the County Board of Supervisors is because resolutions are important for a couple reasons. One, when a county gets behind a state law, what they are saying is that all of their residents and all of their population supports that state law. They are also saying when they get behind a state law that they are putting their values on the line, right? And saying we in San Diego County believe that 16 and 17-year-olds as a county of San Diego should be in the criminal statute on child sex trafficking, right? Two, I propose this measure because when a county backs via a resolution a state law, what happens is that county commits its lobbying resources to the passage of the legislation. So I'm not just throwing a piece of paper up and saying, let's just put a piece of paper on this and let's sign it and let's get the Board of Supervisors to approve it at a meeting. There's reasons behind why I'm asking the county to get a resolution done because it puts the county's lobbying resources behind that legislation. So for every year, the counties have lobbyists that they send up to the state capitol who they spend money on, tax dollars on, to be the lobbyist so that they can lobby for the issues and the bills that the county is backing. This, we are saying through a resolution, if done and passed, would formalize our support and therefore commit our lobbying resources to the passage on the state level, and will commit our lobbying resources to pushing for that. And then finally, I propose this resolution and also asking that each supervisor, which is a little different than I've done in the past, I'm asking each supervisor, Monica Montgomery Stepp, who represents District 4 on the County Board of Supervisors, and need I say that San Diego, City of San Diego, is heavily impacted by this issue. I believe on Roosevelt and some of these other, we have some serious issues in the City of San Diego, and we need the supervisor of the district that represents the City of San Diego to step up and ensure that her voice on human trafficking is clear, and especially on child sex trafficking, which I'm asking her to do. We have not seen her do this. I'm asking her to put this on her priorities list. Child sex trafficking. Jim Desmond, I've asked him to write a letter to the state legislature. Monica to write a letter to the state legislature. Supervisor Tara Lawson-Raymer, the chair of the Board of Supervisors, by all means should be writing a letter to the state legislature saying the chair's office is completely behind this bill. We think that 16 and 17-year-olds should be included in the criminal statute for child sex trafficking. And then I've asked Joel Anderson to do the same. And so I'm asking all the supervisors to do that. In closing, let me say this. There is no room for political games when it comes to our children or when it comes to victims. The law as current is clear. A person who solicits or who agrees to engage in or engages in any act of prostitution is guilty of disorderly conduct, and it is only a misdemeanor in the state of California. Under existing law, if the person solicited was under 16 years of age, or if the person solicited was under 18 years old at the time of the offense, and the person was solicited was a victim of human trafficking, the offense is punishable by a misdemeanor, believe it or not, imprisonment in the county jail for not more than 1 year, right? And a fine not to exceed $10,000. Or as a felony by imprisonment in the county jail for 16 months or 2 to 3 years. This bill, brought forth by Assemblymember Creel and Senator Grove, makes it so that increased punishment be applicable to any solicitation of a person under the age of 18. This bill would require a person who commits prostitution with the intent to receive compensation, money, or anything of value from another person for a first or second violation of those provisions be offered in a diversion program pursuant to a specific provision. This bill would make it a misdemeanor for any person to loiter in any public space with the intent to purchase commercial sex as specified. This bill would make it any person who violates the crime or commits prostitution in exchange essentially a felony. Now, look, what we're saying here is this. We're dealing with repeat offenders, people who don't get this, right? If a John goes and buys someone, right, they're not going to automatically face tremendous punishments, right? And that was the argument that they tried to make last year, these advocates, so-called, that this is going to, impact and create more problems for criminal justice reform. No, it doesn't. It doesn't roll the clock back on criminal justice reform. A matter of fact, it moves the clock forward on standing up for victims, many of whom are black and brown and, come from poverty, challenged and perplexed. I spent 13 years in the county's foster care system. I lost both of my parents very young. I lost my dad when I was 8, and I lost my mom when I was 16. I ended up in the foster care system here in San Diego County and went from home to home to home. I remember experiencing abuse and seeing other forms of exploitation in some of these places. I remember a friend of mine who was at San Pasqual Academy, where I ended my time in foster care, the nation's first residential education facility for foster youth, who was picked up by a pimp regularly for the weekends. She went on visits down to San Diego where we later found out she was being prostituted. And she did not do that by choice. She was pushed into it because of her experience. 60% of foster youth, per FBI statistics, are or have been in the foster care system. So if someone wants to get to the core of why I'm involved in this and why I think it's important, it's because the children that are impacted by this are directly related to me. I am their foster brother, and I feel a deep commitment to ensure that the county understands, the state understands, that your own children, when I emancipated foster care, I had a letter of emancipation signed by the county director of HHSA, who at the time was Nick Mascione, in 2010, and the governor was on my emancipation letter. I was a ward of the state because of my situation of both of my parents being deceased. Therefore, I was adopted by the state in their custody. And the state and the county had a responsibility to protect me. Well, right now, the state and the county has a responsibility to protect these children, and specifically those who they oversee who make up a large portion of the human trafficking population. That is why this is important to me, and that is why we've got to make the point that our children are not for sale. With that being said, I want to now invite Marissa Ugarte, who's doing this work so tirelessly, committed, and has done it time and time again, has gone out on the streets, picked these girls up, just done it over and over again. That is why I will stand with her any day of the week to make sure that we do what we need to do on the policy side to meet the concerns on the streets. Marissa Ugarte of the Bilateral Safety Corridor.
I'm too short. Thank you, Shane. I really appreciate that. The first statement that I want to make is that human rights law says that no child under 18 can consent. That was the first violation of the law that was passed on SB 1414. They disregarded the United Nations mandate that children under 18 cannot consent. Therefore, the other misconception was that 16 and 17-year-olds could very well be, doing this and out of their own choice. That's not right. It wasn't their own choice. On SB 357, when we saw what was happening and the children being brought in broad daylight and nobody could approach them, was a mortal sin. It was a horror. I want to support this bill. I really commend Summer Stefan for doing this because this is so important. Maggie Krell, of course, and Senator Grove. What scares me is the people that don't understand in our county what is going on. Main Street, Roosevelt, Chula Vista on Main Street, Broadway. You have it everywhere. One mayor asked police, what hotels do we have prostitution here in Chula Vista? And law enforcement answered, we have it everywhere. Those children are being recruited in the internet. Those children are out there being every day offered something better, and it's all about money. So my goal is that the county board supervisors for once listen. I've talked to Joel Anderson. I've seen the others. They do nada, and it's not just sex trafficking. It's also child labor trafficking, which also ends into being sex trafficking. So we need to do something. We need to change this. Marjorie for me, is one person that I would always support as an advocate to do whatever she does to make this difference. Foster kids. Every child that I have had between 18 and 19-year-olds and my custody have been in foster care. And actually, the saddest thing is when I got a call saying my little brother is being raped in foster care. It's a horror that we do not care about our children. Their children are not our future. They are our present. And we're not doing anything for them. So I'm hoping that with this media relations that we're doing right now, people listen. Remember, I'm going to say it again, children are not our future, they are our present, and they are suffering, and we need to protect them. Thank you.
You mind doing Spanish translation? Any Spanish translation? Can you do it real quick?
Yeah. Explain the bill?
Yeah, just...
Okay.
Just
Bill,
like
sorry. Bills 379 brings back 16 and 17-year-olds to be protected.
Spanish. Can you do it in Spanish?
In Spanish?
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Can you do it, though, for the live stream?
Yeah. What do I do in live scan?
Say what you said in Spanish.
Yeah.
Ok, lo digo en español.
Sí. Sí. Yeah.
Los niños necesitan ser protegidos. SB 379, AB 379 es importantísima. Es importante porque vamos a prevenir que los niños sean prostituidos y traficados en San Diego. Es necesario que el condado, los supervisores del condado entiendan lo que está pasando. Yo estoy muy contenta de lo que está haciendo Summer Stefan para esto. ¿Por qué? Porque hay muy poca gente que se toman la molestia de entender lo que está pasando en San Diego, en Main Street, en Chula Vista, en todos lados. El alcalde de Chula Vista preguntó a la policía que dónde había prostitución en los hoteles, que en qué hotel. la contestación fue: lo tenemos en todos. No estamos haciendo nada para sancionar los compradores. Si no hay compradores, no hay trata. Entonces lo que se trata es también de darle un lineamiento a los compradores de que no se van a ir tan fácil, de que van a ser arrestados. Y en lo que quiero que se acuerden muy bien también es que los niños no son nuestro futuro, son nuestro presente y tenemos que hacer algo. Yo he estado con Nora Vargas, me han dado una recomendación en el County Board Supervisors y ¿qué ha pasado? No hay nada que esté cambiando. Les pido de favor a ustedes, County Board Supervisors, se unan las fuerzas para que cambie esto. Muchísimas gracias.
At this time, let's hear from Marjorie Saylor. You're not speaking from the DA's office, right?
Hi, thank you. Thank you. So I'm here today, and I'm honored to be here today alongside Shane and Marissa in this effort, in this fight. And we've heard really the most important reason why we need to move forward with this and adopt this resolution is because of the children. The children are most affected by this. They're most impacted by this. Across the U.S., the national age of entry into prostitution is 12 to 14 years old. So we have to understand this is a major, major issue, and we have to protect our children first and foremost. I'm going to go into my story and into why I'm here, because this bill does more than just protect our children, but that is the most crucial piece of this bill. Okay? So for me, and again, my name is Marjorie Saylor. I'm a Director of Human Trafficking Services and Awareness and Care Coordinator here in our county, and I am a survivor leader and advocate. Early childhood sexual abuse, followed by rape before the age of 14, pushed my fragile mind and vulnerable body into the arms of exploitation after running away from home at 15. Over the next 17 years, I experienced both sex and labor trafficking. I was labor trafficked 3 times before the age of 18, and by the age of 21, due to my early grooming and vulnerability to sexual exploitation, I had fallen deeply into commercial sexual exploitation through legal channels of prostitution via strip clubs and escort services. I nearly lost my life at the hands of sex buyers on more than one occasion during this period. I was trapped in a system of prostitution that I thought I could control, but in truth, I was nothing more than an object for sale, nothing more than a body to be used by men as they saw fit. When money changed hands, I was expected to comply with every whim and desire, and it never truly felt like consent. At the age of, if I refused to comply, I was mistreated, beat, strangled, and at the age of 22, finally, I was left for dead. As an adult adapted to my life, I had fleeting moments of false empowerment as I could sometimes have the final say in who, what, when, and where. But this wasn't empowerment, it was survival. And then finally, through these legal avenues of sexual exploitation, I was trafficked again, only this time for sex. I escaped after another near-death experience at the hands of yet another buyer, and finally walked away from the sex industry, only shortly after to fall victim to DV and then labor trafficking again. This time, now 30 years old, after being taken across state lines all across the U.S., I felt stuck in this life I understood, pregnant and hopeless. This life that I understood I could not escape, okay? Pregnant and hopeless, I thought the only way out was to take my life. My whole life until this point, I felt as if I was screaming inside for something to change, for a real chance at a life of happiness, whatever that was, something else. I did not know, nor could I dare to dream of my life ahead far removed. But I survived and at last made it out, for as a young mother, I had to find a way to keep my baby girl safe. So a month before her first birthday, I found an out after another beating. I fled with her in my arms and never looked back. Today, I barely recognize the woman and girl that I once was, for I found myself with real purpose, that of being a mother, and that purpose grew not only to protect her, but now to safeguard every other woman and girl, finding themselves abandoned by systems that were meant to keep them safe and cast aside by those that they loved, left to be used for sexual gratification by the rest of a world that feeds off of their loss, vulnerability, and pain. For far too long, we've let people view sex trafficking and prostitution as something separate or as a victimless or nonviolent crime or non-serious crime, and not as a form of gender-based violence and not as inherently harmful as it is, making excuses for those who benefit the most when legislation ignores our pleas and looks the other way. In reality, it's extreme violence against women and girls like me. And until laws like AB 379 are passed, we will continue to be abused and lose our lives while society turns a blind eye to its complicity as it allows perpetrators to go unchecked. Too long, these systems have re-victimized by adding blame on the exploited, ignoring the buyers and partners in the perpetration of our abuse. Enough is enough. We have had enough. We are dying out here, but we have found a solution. AB 379 and our counties taking seriously these resolutions to adopt this legislation is key. It takes harsh criminalization away from the prostituted individual, understanding their vulnerabilities and victimization in it while holding the real perpetrator accountable, and giving law enforcement the tools they need to assist us. It is the trauma-informed approach to recognize this is the humane way to address this issue. And it doesn't just provide exit from exploitation, but provides funding streams for victim support straight from